Vera, honey, I will never understand the way your brain works. Hi everyone, welcome back. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about a little bit more of an abstract topic that's been kind of bouncing around in my brain ever since I started transitioning. And that's this idea that I have that transitioning is effectively, for me anyway, personally, the ultimate expression of the rejection of any and all expectations that were ever placed upon me, which the more I think about it, the more I realize has kind of been like a persistent recurring theme running throughout my life, is that I'm just consistently rejecting all the expectations that anybody ever places on me. And yeah, transitioning is essentially the highest form of that I have yet achieved. Yeah, so let's get into it. I've got a few different little subsections that I'm going to break this down into. I will start with the one that's probably most directly related to my transition, chronologically, it's like near the beginning. Basically, the rejection of expectations for like gender roles that I had as like an adolescent, like a teenager. So I obviously had like some of these like masculine like gender roles and expectations placed upon me, and not only did I not live up to those expectations, I actively rejected them and kind of chastised them for even being placed upon me in the first place. So I think that a good starting example for this is dating. Like, my dad would always ask me, like, oh, do you have a girlfriend yet? Like, are you dating any girls at school? Is there any cute girls that you're really into? Or if we would go somewhere in public, like to the beach, he'd be like, oh, why don't you go run off and like find some cute girls to talk to or something like that. And I always hated him saying this to me and like putting this pressure on me to like, to me it felt like disrespectful towards women and like objectifying them, and I suppose it could have been, although it didn't necessarily have to be, but I was just so adamantly opposed to any possible scenario where I could like treat a woman like a target, like an object of desire, like a goal for me to like chat up and like flirt with her and get her number, or like have sex with her even. Probably is what my dad was thinking, like, why the fuck isn't this kid having sex? Like, I just couldn't do that. Like, I had no problem talking to women like in my like actual day-to-day life, and I had plenty of friends that were girls, but I could not live up to the expectation of like being like a hormonal teenage boy chasing skirts. That was like an absolute hard no for me. Another good example is something that I mentioned in my last video about clothes and like buying clothes as a trans woman. It's that my family totally always expected me to get into like clothes and fashion, and I remember my grandma specifically always saying like, oh, are you into like this like brand of sneaker, or like this I don't know, fashion brand or whatever, or like, oh, are you excited to go clothes shopping for the new school year? And I would always be like, no, what? That has absolutely zero interest in me whatsoever at all. And they were always like, oh, well, just give it a couple years, you'll be really into it like all the other kids your age. Never happened. It did happen eventually once I transitioned, and now like I really like clothes and having like a cool style. But yeah, as a teenage boy, that was a no-go for me. And in fact, again, I very actively rejected this expectation by like coming up with this idea that I was just so like not shallow or vain that I like didn't care about what kind of clothes I wore, and I just wore the same thing for years, and just because it was comfortable and like it worked for me, like, oh, I don't care about my appearance. Like, that is so dumb and so vain, and it's like, why would you even expect that of me? Why does anybody do that? Like, that's just dumb. Like, I was very actively rejecting it and essentially calling it dumb. Anything that I didn't like or understand as a teenager was dumb. And yeah, another great example of that is sports. For example, my dad really liked basketball, and my grandpa really likes football, and my parents, to their credit, this was a good parenting decision on their end. It was just me being a little transgender weirdo. Like, my parents tried to get me in team sports consistently as a kid. They tried a few different ones, particularly basketball. My dad, like I said, really likes basketball, and I'm pretty tall, so he thought, oh, you know, my kid could be a basketball player. That would work. But I played a couple games, and I was like, this is stressful. I don't like this. And like when I played baseball, I didn't even play the game. I just sat down in the field and started picking dandelions. Oh my god. Yeah, so they tried to get me to be in the sports, but it was just not my thing. And another, like, I heard a little story that my grandpa, when I was born, held me for the first time and looked at me and said, this kid is going to be the star quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers someday. And that did not happen. Do I look like the star quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers? Nope. And yeah, by the time I got to ninth grade, or somewhere around there, like the beginning of high school, I was very actively, once again, rejecting this expectation, rejecting sports. I was like, sports are so dumb. Like, sports ball? Like, what is this dumb, like, meat game that you guys play where you just run into each other? And, like, you're not even playing the game. You're just watching it on TV. Why do you care so much? I was like, I don't understand this. I don't like this. It's dumb. It's really dumb. And, again, I don't think that I was very actively aware of this at the time, but there's like definitely like a trend of like masculinity to a lot of these things that I was like actively rejecting. I didn't feel comfortable embracing like a more feminine alternative, so I just kind of like existed in my own little world outside of any all gender or expectations. Yeah, so maybe I would have liked joining the women's sports team, who knows, but I didn't like the like masculine culture surrounding like men's sports teams. And another little example of that, there's not as strong of an expectation here, but in addition to like having family expectations, there's just like general social and like cultural pressures and expectations that people experience. And a minor one of those was with the video games. I liked video games, but I feel like I could feel this like pressure within my culture, and I mean among my friends too, like the teenage boys like playing Call of Duty on their Xbox 360, like a cool like gritty shooter where you like run around as like an army guy and like kill people. That was the dumbest shit in the world to me. Sorry, try not to swear. Yeah, that was so dumb to me, and I was always like a Nintendo mega fan. Like I like collected all their consoles and like wallpapered my room with Nintendo posters and played all the games, and I was like, this is so much better than like that dark, ugly, gritty like Call of Duty on the Xbox 360. Why doesn't anybody like that? It's so dumb. I don't get it. Yeah, so just very actively rejecting anything related to masculinity or anything that people expected of me. In addition to these like specific gender role things, I was just also generally like a weird kid. And obviously a lot of people could relate to this. You know, it's probably got something to do with like some like neurodivergent like queer shit, like making me not like the other girls, you know. I mean, don't get me wrong, I was living as a boy at the time, but I was like kind of not like anyone. I had a few friends that I was pretty close with, but even in my friend circle, I was kind of like the weird like fringe one. And I think I just had like a reputation around school for being like generally friendly and like sociable, but also just incredibly like eccentric and always like lost in my own world in my head and like doing and saying strange things and like non sequiturs and stuff like that. One example that always sticks in my mind is when I gave like my presentation for like our last project in English class senior year. It was just a little creative thing about like something that you were involved with in your life generally. It was like supposed to be Dante's Inferno, like the 7 layers of hell. So like you could do 7 layers of like soccer hell, or 7 layers of like the local ice cream shop hell, or 7 layers of speech and debate hell. I did 7 layers of hell, which was like this weird meta conceptual thing where I like ran through in each layer like a different shitty idea that I had for the hell project. It got really meta and really weird, and I just remember at the end of the project, my teacher looking at me and saying, Vera, I will never understand the way your brain works, and that has stuck with me for years. So yeah, I've just always been like kind of like an eccentric, strange person, and I'm trying not to be like, oh, like I'm so cool because I'm like so weird and different and not like the other girls, but like it's an undeniable fact that like I kind of like march to the beat of my own drum, and I kind of always have in my life. Okay, 10 minutes already. This is going to be a longer video because we are only about halfway through. So now in my adult life, I think besides transition, the strongest manifestation of this is that like I am bucking the general social expectation and expectation that my family had of me for like life goals, like the general like life path that like most like American people are expected to follow, of like go to school, like get married, settle down, like have a job, have kids, like live in the suburbs, all of that shit. No. Maybe I'll have kids one day, but my overall life goal right now is to leave the United States of America within a year and then just go start traveling the world, like living on as little money as possible, essentially. And I hate driving. Like I got a license a couple years like after I could have, and I drove for a little bit and then got a car crash and decided that driving was dumb. And again, yeah, this trend continues today. I think driving is dumb. I'm just gonna say it. Like, I think that cars are dumb. No shade to people who do drive, because I know that it's like a practical, like, infrastructural necessity in the United States, because our like infrastructure is so dependent on cars. It's ridiculous. But yeah, I just think that I can and do ramble for long periods of time about how ridiculous driving culture is and how ridiculous it is that our infrastructure is built on cars. And it's like, this is like a very normal thing that's like expected of everyone in the United States, is to like get a car and drive everywhere you go, but I actively reject it. I skateboard everywhere I go. That is my transportation. That's my car, essentially, is my skateboard. And that is definitely not what people expect. I mean, I'm not doing it just because I'm trying to like break expectations, but like, I have decided for myself, this skateboarding is better than driving, and I'm going to do that all the time, and I would like to explain it to people if they're interested. Yeah, so that's just like one little example, but yeah, I'm like trying to, my life goals are like very, very different from like the expectations that most people have for like their life. Like, I'm not trying to like get married, settle down, buy a house. Yeah, I don't ever anticipate buying a house. At least not within decades, or a car for that matter. I don't anticipate getting married for quite a long time, or having kids for quite a long time. My goal is to just go and to just like have like life experiences, essentially. And this is an interesting phenomenon that I think is actually relatable to a lot of queer people in some way. I've heard this concept of queer time, where it's like, as queer people, we don't work on like the same like time scale of like major life events and markers and transitions and stuff, because you like, well, for a long time it wasn't acceptable for queer people to just like settle down in suburbs and like raise a couple of kids. Like, that was like not, they were not even allowed into that society. So yeah, the like general like life timeline is very different for queer people, and even though I could do that shit today, even before I transitioned, I knew that I didn't want to do that, but now I definitely not going to do that. And this is also kind of related to something that I'll probably talk about in another video at some point, but like my main character syndrome that I feel very strongly, like I feel like a fucking anime protagonist or something, but like I skateboard around all the time. Like, I skateboard around everywhere I go. I wear like crazy, like flashy, colorful outfits. I blare music on my speaker. I like want to travel the world and be like Marco Polo and a rock star. I mean, here I am making YouTube videos trying to be like an internet star or whatever. It's like, I definitely have very strong main character syndrome, and that's something I ruminate on a lot. But that is like, everything about that is like me being different and unique and special, and just not going with the flow, not like conforming to expectations. And I'm not trying to brag about this and saying like I'm so cool or so better for doing this, like I'm a superior person. I'm just saying that like this is like an unavoidable fact and trend that I've noticed in my life, is that like I cannot help but do this at like every turn. I am just constantly going against the grain and like bucking expectations. Oh, I need some water. This has been a lot of talking and a long ass video. I hope that you guys are enjoying it. Give me a sec. Alright, little intermission there. Okay, so now I'm getting into like kind of the final stretch of the video. where I'm finally going to start talking about transitioning and how that has been like the ultimate expression of this trend that's been happening throughout my whole life. My family never expected me to be trans. Nobody really expected me to be trans. Maybe my ex-girlfriend could see it a little bit sometimes, but she definitely was like not cognizant enough of transgender issues to actually have predicted that that was like a thing that could happen to me. Was that I had transitioned or realized that I was trans. Like, even my dad, who is rather similar to me in a lot of these ways about like being kind of like a go with the like beat to your own drum, like go against the grain kind of person, he never ever expected me to be trans, and in fact still has a hard time believing that this has actually happened. And I just think back on like everybody that I knew in high school, like even like all these people, I had a reputation for being like this eccentric, like non sequitur weirdo, lost in my own head all the time. None of these people would have expected that I was trans. I mean, maybe some of them it wouldn't be surprising to hear it now, but like nobody could have, I guarantee you nobody could have predicted that I was gonna like turn into a girl one day. Like nobody in my life could have seen that coming. Nobody would have expected that. Everybody expected me to like eventually probably become more comfortable with like my like masculine, like with my masculinity at some point in my life, or maybe just be like kind of like a feminine man. But I don't think anybody expected that I was gonna like just destroy the concept of gender and then just become a girl just because I thought that I should. That's the craziest thing ever. I don't know. And now that I am a girl, like, this trend continues where I'm still continuously rejecting expectations of femininity. This is a whole thing, like, about being trans, about, like, balancing, like, expectations of, like, conformity and, like, doing stuff to pass or doing things to, like, make it easier for cis people to understand versus, like, doing stuff yourself and, like, experimenting with gender yourself. But, like, I am very definitely gender nonconforming in a lot of ways. Like my hobbies and interests in particular are like not typical hobbies and interests of women. And I'm being like very stereotypical here for like the explicit purpose of like demonstrating that I am just kind of like consistently going against the grain of like social expectations for like a gender role. Although obviously I'm not saying that like most women are like this or should do this or like this is like a normal expectation for society to have and I'm so cool and unique for breaking it. I'm just saying that like I'm consistently doing the things that aren't like prescribed by society. So like I play in like a rock band and I skateboard and I'm really into like I play this one game, Europa Universalis 4, which is like a history simulation game where you just stare at a map for hours. I've never heard, spoken to, seen another woman play that game ever. I'm really into it and I've got like a couple thousand hours in it. Never once have I ever heard of another girl playing this game. Yeah, and I don't know, I can get in kind of like a bruh, like hanging out with the dudes kind of thing for a while, and like makeup, I don't know, I think that I have gotten a little bit more conformist with makeup, but it's interesting because when I was a teenager I was like, makeup is so dumb, why do you like makeup? Even though I wasn't a girl, but like the same thing was happening to me. Like on the other side, I was like rejecting explicitly masculine things, but I was also rejecting like super explicitly feminine things, like the cultural expectation of that like women need to wear makeup when they go out every day. So I think it was broader than just masculinity. It was like general like gender prescriptivism and like life prescriptivism in general. I kind of hate prescriptivism, but yeah, it's like a balance that I have to find in my own life as a transgender person, like playing into like gender for like my own affirmation and social pragmatism for like passing and stuff, while also at the same time being gender nonconforming and like expressing myself through gender nonconforming behavior and like realizing, like having like the gender pill enlightenment or whatever, that it's all fake and I can do whatever I want and just having fun with that. It's a balance to be struck, but ultimately, this is like the most subversive thing that I could even do in the first place, though, is to transition. Like, I always thought, like, oh, I'm kind of like a subversive, like, countercultural person, and even though I, like, have some gender-conforming aspects now as a woman, it's still like subversive and gender non-conforming in a way for me to even be a woman because I was born assigned male at birth. You know? Does that make sense? Okay, we're getting in 20 minutes now. It's over 20 minutes, so I'm gonna end this video. But yeah, being trans is... Being trans is me choosing my own path in life and sticking to my guns and being very adamant about my own like individualism and independence, which is the culmination of, I feel like, every facet of my personality this has bled into throughout my entire life. And I don't know if all that was because I was trans or if because of like some broader thing about my personality in general, but this feels very appropriate for me that I have done this based on all of my like previous life experiences. Okay, conclusion statement over. Outro. Thank you for watching the video. I don't know exactly what to say. I'm gonna make more videos. Like, comment, and subscribe. I kind of took a break last week. I made kind of like a more low-key experimental video that wasn't super about being trans, and just took a little bit of a break. But I think I'm gonna get back on making 2 videos a week. You'll probably expect to see another video this Friday, so subscribe for that. Like and comment to like boost me in the algorithm. Gonna get to 1,000 subs soon. That'll be fun. All right, bye everyone.